In the glittering world of social media, where curated images paint a picture of perfect lives, not everything is as it seems. Sometimes, beneath the glossy surface of luxury trips and designer clothes, lies a disturbing truth, a desperate facade built on deceit, debt, and ultimately unspeakable betrayal. Today, on True Crime Continent, we delve into the infuriating murder of Colleen Rebelo, a case that exposes the dark side of ambition and the ultimate sacrifice made for a lie. We often start by telling you about the victim, and we will get to Colleen very soon. But to truly understand this story, we need to first introduce you to one of her sons, Andre. You're going to hear a lot about Andre, and it's essential to understand the context of his life before we delve into the tragic events surrounding his mother. Andre Rebelo was one of Colleen's two middle children, and from the outset, he presented himself as a crypto bro. This self-proclaimed title probably tells you a lot about the image he cultivated. He appeared to be a successful cryptocurrency trader, living an impossibly luxurious life. But here's the twist. This lavish lifestyle wasn't primarily showcased on his social media accounts. Instead, it was paraded across the pages of his then-girlfriend, Gracie Piscopo, a major Australian influencer. Why would a seemingly successful crypto trader display his wealth through someone else's platform? Gracie Piscopo, with over 1 million followers on Instagram and more than 300,000 YouTube subscribers, was the public face of their so-called fortune. By 2020, Gracie and Andre had been together for about 8 years. They lived in a large, pristine family home, just a few miles from Colleen, with their 2-year-old son. Their content was a carefully crafted illusion: luxury trips, designer outfits, a perfectly white, immaculate house, and a gleaming Range Rover. Anyone scrolling through their feeds would assume they had it all, and that's exactly what they wanted people to think. In fairness to Gracie, this is a common strategy for influencers. They share an aspirational lifestyle, allowing followers to live vicariously or simply be curious. But what viewers saw was a carefully curated fantasy, not the reality behind the scenes. Andre even became Gracie's unofficial business manager, projecting this powerful dynamic duo energy. Keeping up appearances was paramount to Andre, and he would go to extreme lengths to maintain it. Now that you have some backstory on Andre and Gracie, let's talk about his mother, Colleen. Her story is equally upsetting and shocking, and the sheer audacity of what happened is truly unbelievable. Let's go back to 2020. Remember those crazy times when the pandemic was just kicking off? That year, Colleen Rebelo was a 58-year-old single mother of 4, living in Perth, Australia. Her other 3 adult children were Julian, Monique, and Fabian. Monique and Fabian were still living at home, a small but important detail. Monique was staying temporarily while training to become a paramedic, and 19-year-old Fabian hadn't moved out yet. From what we know, Colleen was the kind of mother who would do anything for her kids, always striving to ensure they lived the best lives possible and had everything they needed. While information about her ex-husband's role in their lives is scarce, we do know the divorce was bitter, and she largely handled the parenting herself. Once her children were mostly grown and self-sufficient, Colleen began to prioritize herself again. By 2019, she had enrolled in a master's program for health administration at Murdoch University. Going back to school, especially for a master's degree after years away, is incredibly challenging and speaks volumes about her dedication and ambition. She even started a new job at the health department in May 2020, which she was incredibly excited about. Tragically, Colleen never got the chance to truly live this new chapter of her life. On May 25th, it was all brutally taken away from her for absolutely no reason. That day began normally. At 10 a.m., Colleen drove her son Fabian to work at a local supermarket, planning to pick him up at 2 p.m. when his shift ended. But 2 p.m. came and went, and Colleen was nowhere to be seen. This was highly unusual for Colleen. She was always reliable when it came to her kids. Fabian started texting and calling, hoping for a simple miscommunication, but he received no reply. Eventually, he decided to walk home. He wasn't panicked yet, but the unease settled in when he arrived home. He could hear the shower running, but when he called out for his mom, there was no reply. He even knocked on the bathroom door, in case she couldn't hear him over the water, but was met with complete silence. Fabian made the decision to open the door himself. Imagine the horrifying sight that greeted him. He found his mother, slumped down and unresponsive in the shower. The shock must have been immense. He immediately called 000, Australia's equivalent of 911, and attempted CPR. But despite everyone's best efforts, it was too late to save Colleen. She was gone. To call this discovery shocking simply doesn't do it justice. Colleen had a few health concerns like osteopenia, low bone density, and Hashimoto's disease, a common and manageable thyroid condition. Neither of these conditions were fatal. Generally speaking, she was very healthy for her age, took care of herself, and exercised regularly. For her to suddenly collapse in the shower made absolutely no sense to anyone. For the first couple of weeks, there were no clear answers. Everyone was confused, and the coroner couldn't pinpoint an exact cause of death, ultimately ruling it as natural causes. But was there anything natural about Colleen's death? Absolutely not. And it's actually thanks to an insurance company that the truth eventually came to light. In the weeks following his mother's death, Andre began acting, shall we say, suspicious. For context, Julian, the oldest sibling, was the only one who didn't live in Perth. He flew in after Colleen's death and planned to stay a few weeks to sort out her affairs. As the executor of her estate, Julian was in charge of everything. However, Andre started taking on roles that weren't his, and he was doing it all in secret. For instance, Julian needed his mother's driver's license for something, but it was mysteriously missing. Andre had taken it, claiming he'd already handled whatever Julian needed to do. Being helpful was out of character for Andre, and it certainly wasn't his responsibility. This immediately rubbed Julian the wrong way. Even more unbelievably, Andre started having his mother's mail forwarded to his own house, even though his brother and sister were still living at Colleen's home. This was a massive red flag, and it only scratched the surface of his strange behavior. But soon, the reason became terrifyingly clear. The wealthy, we have it all lifestyle portrayed on social media was a complete illusion. Andre wasn't a successful cryptocurrency trader at all. Gracie was the true breadwinner of the family, which in itself is fine. The problem was Andre's false pretense. While Gracie earned a good income, a few thousand per Instagram post, and one brand deal even paid her over $80,000, the couple was consistently spending more than they brought in. They were living far beyond their means, all to maintain this perfect online facade. Andre had reportedly told Gracie they were about to come into a significant amount of money. The reality was they were in debt, a staggering $112,000. Their bills weren't being paid, and debt collectors were metaphorically knocking on their door. You would never have guessed this from their pictures or videos. It truly looked like they had everything. But they had no assets in their names, and the walls were closing in. For Andre, the pressure was mounting. So what desperate, sick solution did he devise? He took out 3 life insurance policies in his mother's name, totaling more than $1 million, and then murdered her to access that money. How could killing his loving mother, who had always been good to him, seem like the best solution to his debt? It's incomprehensible. From a mother's perspective, it's impossible to wrap your mind around birthing and raising a child, only for them to take your life. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when Andre's monstrous plan truly began, but it was the insurance companies themselves that ultimately uncovered it. When Andre started inquiring about the payouts, things simply weren't adding up. One agency, where he had a $500,000 policy under Colleen's name, decided to notify the police. What did investigators quickly discover that immediately raised alarms? It became glaringly obvious that Colleen had no part in purchasing these policies. Andre had bought all 3 of them less than a week before his mother died, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. It's truly baffling that he believed he wouldn't get caught for taking out these massive policies just days before her murder. He didn't even bother to get policies for anyone else in his life. It was only for his mother. Investigators also learned that Andre created a fake email address, then forged copies of Colleen's death certificate, her last will and testament, and even the coroner's report. He also ensured he was the sole beneficiary of her entire estate, leaving absolutely nothing to his siblings. The method Andre used was both cold and incredibly calculated. Apparently, he even used an online AI software to pose as his mom's psychologist. When he reached out to the insurance company, they requested her medical records, including her mental health history, to rule out self-harm. The real psychologist refused to give him Colleen's records. So Andre not only sent a forged medical report from the fake email, but he also used a fake voice generator to leave a voicemail for the insurance company, pretending to be the psychologist. This guy literally Googled fake voice generator and best online deep fake voice. The insurance company also asked for a copy of the death certificate to confirm the cause of death. When Andre was told it could take up to 9 months, he simply created his own, falsely writing that she had died of a brain aneurysm. Then, he forged the coroner's signature. It's astounding that he genuinely believed this would work. It's also believed that he called the coroner's office multiple times, pretending to be his brother Julian, who was Colleen's next of kin, likely to get updates on the autopsy. In another shocking display of disrespect, Colleen's remains ended up being cremated, even though she had wanted to be buried. It seems he was desperate to get rid of the evidence as quickly as possible and claim the money. In October 2020, Andre was brought in for questioning, along with all his siblings. It quickly became clear that his siblings were completely unaware of the extent of his actions. His sister Monique, for example, had actually heard from the real psychologist, who directly asked her why documents had been submitted on her behalf. Monique, confused, asked Andre, who simply told her the psychologist must have mixed up patients. They knew something was off, but they didn't see the full, horrific picture. That same day, as the picture became horrifyingly clear during questioning, Andre was arrested on several fraud charges. Search warrants were executed on both his house and his mother's house, where electronic devices were collected. Incriminating information was later found on his devices. As for Gracie Piscopo, investigators were confident she had no involvement. They even installed listening devices in her and Andre's bedroom and living room between September and December, before and after his arrest, to see if anything implicated her. While initially listening for fraud-related conversations, they also started listening for anything related to Colleen's suspicious death. Ultimately, nothing pointed to Gracie being involved. She appeared genuinely shocked and angry at him for what he had done, even before knowing the full extent of his crimes. Gracie was heard saying things like, "What have you done? You put us into so much trouble, and why would you do that?" Andre, ever the deceiver, assured her everything would be okay, claiming it was a misunderstanding and they would soon be back to their fancy life. Gracie's main concern was him going to jail and her becoming a single parent, a very valid fear. Andre told her he wouldn't go to jail, even suggesting he would get his money and leave the country before any serious arrest. He didn't, however, leave Perth, remaining there for the next 2 years as if nothing had happened, though still facing fraud charges. The slow pace of the fraud investigation was likely due to investigators piecing together the larger puzzle, his mother's murder. By November 2022, they were confident they had enough. That month, Andre Rebelo was arrested and taken back into custody, this time charged with first-degree murder. Here's what investigators ultimately believe happened. When they delved into Andre's finances, they saw the dire truth. He was living well beyond their means and was deeply in debt. They believe he continuously fed Gracie a false narrative that he was earning money in crypto, while secretly planning to collect his mother's life insurance after murdering her. The money, of course, was from those 3 policies he'd fraudulently taken out less than a week before Colleen died. To help prove this, investigators pointed to a major misstep by Andre. Between December 2019 and July 2020, he deleted almost his entire internet search history. Did he really think deleting his search history meant it was gone forever? In 2020, and even before, it's mind-boggling that people think deleting something online means investigators won't find it. Some of his searches were recovered, revealing he had been looking up terms like coroner's aneurysm causes, suggesting he may have been plotting his mother's murder as early as 5 months before he carried it out. They also pointed to the fact that Andre was at his mom's house during the time frame it was believed she was killed. On May 25, 2020, Andre had plans for lunch with Gracie and her visiting cousins. However, sometime in the late morning, Andre simply vanished. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving and wasn't responding to Gracie's frantic texts or calls. Between 11:10 a.m. and 11:34 a.m., she called him a dozen times, leaving angry messages like, "Answer your Fing phone. Where are you? Oh my God, I swear to God, Andre, do you not have a phone?" What is wrong with you? Answer for F's sake. I am fuming at you. I'm so angry. All these messages went unanswered. It wasn't until around 12:30 p.m. that Andre finally used his phone, texting his mom to ask if she could watch his son that day or the next for errands. What was he clearly trying to do with this seemingly casual text? He was trying to set the scene, to create a paper trail suggesting he believed his mother was alive and that he had no idea she had died. A classic attempt to cover his tracks. At some point that day, though sources are not entirely consistent on the exact timing, he casually strolled back into their house, acting completely normal, as if he hadn't just ghosted Gracie for hours. He simply asked where they wanted lunch. While it wasn't totally out of character for him to have his phone on silent, investigators believe in this instance, it was silent so he could execute his plan without interruption or trace. However, that didn't work. His phone ended up pinging on a cell tower right by Colleen's house in the time frame she was believed to have been murdered. Not only that, his distinctive white Range Rover was seen outside her house around the estimated time of death. Colleen's sister, who lived nearby and drove by the house in that same time frame, remembered seeing his car. Even though the autopsy couldn't definitively pinpoint a cause of death, there was no other reasonable explanation for Colleen's demise. There were no signs of a break-in, ruling out a stranger. She had no medical conditions that would point to an accidental death, and according to her psychologist, self-harm was absolutely not on the table. These points were all highlighted during his trial. When Andre was arrested in November 2022, he, unsurprisingly, pleaded not guilty. Due to the seriousness of the charge, he was denied bail and sat awaiting his trial, which began in November 2024. The trial was set to cover both the fraud and murder charges. However, just before the trial began, Andre confessed to the fraud, or at least some of it. He claimed he did forge all those documents and pretended to be the psychologist, but not for the reasons the prosecution was saying. This audacious man tried to argue that leading up to his mother's death, she had actually asked him to help her get life insurance. He claimed she was worried about turning 60 and wanted life insurance to protect her kids and grandkids, which, yes, is a perfectly normal reason. But he also supposedly told him she was nervous about COVID and a family history of cancer, making it a layer of protection for her loved ones. And how did he explain why she would ask him specifically to do it? Andre, the self-proclaimed crypto bro, said it was because he was tech-savvy. According to him, she thought he could get her the best deal. He then said he created the fake email because Gmail was easier for her to use and got her 3 policies from 3 different agencies to maximize coverage. Obviously, everything he said was a total fabrication, yet he genuinely tried to push this narrative as reality. And why forge everything after the fact? Andre claimed he believed his mother took her own life and knew the policies wouldn't cover that. So, in his version of the story, everything he did was to protect his siblings, ensuring they got the money. This contradicts the fact that he listed himself as the sole beneficiary, for which he also had an explanation. He thought only one person could be the beneficiary and planned to give them their money afterward. Of course, that never happened. For all he admitted to on the stand, he adamantly denied killing Colleen. What truly trips me up is that he had denied all of this during his original questioning, and that interview was played for the jury. If he lied once, who's to say he wasn't lying again? Plus, his new story just didn't make sense. Why wouldn't he immediately tell his siblings about the policies, if it was such an innocent explanation? He claimed it just didn't come up. And why wouldn't he tell anyone that he was with her right before she died? That's something you would immediately tell your family. Remember how he went AWOL that morning and his phone pinged at her house? With so much proof that he was there, he couldn't reasonably deny it. Instead, he told the jury he went over to have coffee with his mom. This dummy actually thought the jury would believe that she coincidentally just died shortly after their nice little coffee. He had an excuse for absolutely everything. Not good excuses, but prepared ones. The thing was, he was incredibly sloppy and made several key mistakes, particularly related to the scene. When Colleen's body was found, she was still wearing all of her jewelry, and her hair was still up in a ponytail or bun. There wasn't even a bath mat or a towel outside the shower, suggesting she wasn't planning on showering. Colleen was a healthy person, her doctor testified to this. While the defense pointed out a slight heart abnormality to suggest cardiac arrhythmia as a cause, the undetermined cause of death cut both ways. The coroner couldn't definitively say she was murdered, but he couldn't definitively say she wasn't. Plus, Colleen had bruises on her hands, arms, shin, and knee, as well as blood spots on her eyes consistent with suffocation. Some of these wounds were healed, suggesting they were unrelated, but the cluster was highly suspicious. It's impossible to imagine this was all just a coincidence. The testimony from Andre's siblings highlighted how abnormal his behavior was after their mom's death. The sudden interest in her affairs, going behind their backs to get her mail. He even spoke to a realtor about selling her home, while two of his siblings were still living in it. It's hard to understand how any of this could be excused. Gracie also took the stand, questioned thoroughly, and even accused of trying to protect him. She had initially told investigators Andre was with her the whole day and never mentioned his disappearing act. Her response was that she didn't think it was important at the time, which is somewhat understandable, as they were questioning her about fraud, not murder. I do feel for her. The media and social media have been unkind, but she truly seems to have had no idea of the full horror. On the stand, she recalled Andre telling her he was running errands that morning and dropping off a bag of clothes at his mom's house. He appeared completely ordinary. It genuinely seemed she was as blindsided as everyone else. But nobody was as blindsided as Colleen must have been. In the end, after a 3-week trial, the jury found Andre Rebelo guilty of first-degree murder. This sick individual reportedly sat there with a raised eyebrow and a slight smile, showing zero emotion. His father was in court to support him, but none of his siblings were present, and who could blame them? What he did is pure evil, beyond unforgivable. All for money, all for the facade of the internet, to pretend he was this successful crypto trader? It's incomprehensible. If he had just asked his mom for help with money, she likely would have given it to him, or at least brainstormed a way to help. She was an excellent mother who only wanted to support her children. But instead of admitting the truth and asking for help, he committed the most cowardly, evil, sick act a person can do, killing his own mother. What makes it even sadder is that Colleen had confided in a few people that she was worried about Andre's business. She didn't see the longevity in social media and didn't truly understand cryptocurrency. Her intuition was tragically on point. Everything she was concerned about ultimately cost her her life. Thankfully, Andre Rebelo was held fully accountable for his monstrous actions. In April 2025, he was sentenced to life in prison. With the possibility of parole in 25 years, it's hard to imagine he might walk free one day. Time will tell if that happens. We certainly hope it does not. 25 years doesn't feel like enough for such a heinous crime. But it is encouraging that his sentence was life in prison. This entire case is incredibly depressing, upsetting, and infuriating. What kind of person does this to their own mother? To their siblings? To take her away from everything she was about to start doing, her master's program, her new job. He was so selfish, he took it all away for money, for the false image of a dream life on the internet. It's sick. Colleen deserved so much better. His siblings deserved so much better. Gracie deserved so much better than Andre. And now his son is without a father. Though in this instance, perhaps he's better off without Andre as a father. I hope Andre spends the rest of his life behind bars, regretting his actions. I hope what he did to his mom haunts his dreams, and that he lives the rest of his life miserable. Perhaps he can find a way to make money in jail, since that seems to be all he cares about. It's truly frustrating to imagine what would bring someone to do something like this to their own mother. So sick. We send our best to everyone who loved Colleen, all her family, all her friends, all her children, and to Gracie and their son. This has been a horribly tragic and traumatic experience for everyone involved. For Colleen, there are no words. The idea of being murdered by your own child, it's just so profoundly wrong. As always, we want to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. That's going to be it for True Crime Continent today. If you're looking for more content, make sure to subscribe right here to True Crime Continent for more real crime stories. We hope you're having a great day and stay safe out there.